Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today we're doing some nationwide coverage on a lot of the different national events that took place over the last few weeks in all the different regions. This is going to be a really cool video, definitely the first of its kind where we're able to talk about a lot of the different regions that play our game. And first and foremost, super huge shout out to whoever runs topdeckdiffusion.com. This is the first time I've ever seen this website, and I'm fairly certain it's run by French players because when I first loaded into the site, it wasn't in English. I think it was in French, and my web browser was able to translate it. But yeah, once again, super huge shout out to you guys because this just has a lot of great information on it. Like, we have a lot of the first place lists here from a lot of the different national events, so that's going to really help us, go over some data. And what we're going to do in today's video is go over a lot of these first place lists, and then we'll do some inference and talk about some ideas going into Worlds, which is coming up very, very soon. So we will get into that. Once again, super huge shout out to whoever is running Top Deck Diffusion. Definitely check them out. I'm going to try to reference them a lot more going forward, because I've mentioned before how tough it is sometimes for me to get like a lot of the information from the other regions, and it seems like this site seems to have a lot of that, so that's super awesome. But anyways, we'll get into it. If you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you don't miss a video. And one more thing I want to say is like just a blanket statement before we start covering this data. I've seen a lot of posts on the Facebook groups, as I'm sure a lot of you guys have as well, about a lot of different cheating and poor TOs and poor TO actions in some of the different regionals and some of the different nationals. I don't have enough specific data to speak specifically on any particular event or any particular TO or any particular player, so I'm not going to do that. But I am going to put out a general statement that if you are a cheater, you're a scumbag. It's just not worth it. You shouldn't be doing it. Obviously, I think most people should definitely share that sentiment. But one thing I really want to drive home is that this is kind of a call out on Bandai, that there are videos of blatant cheating from webcams that I've seen. I'm sure many of you guys have seen because people have posted them publicly. And if these players are not being held accountable for their actions, if they're not being reprimanded appropriately, that looks bad on you guys, Bandai. So I do want to just let that be known. That's my opinion on that. I do also want to say that I don't know how any of these different actions are going to, necessarily influence any of these first place lists we're going to talk about. So I do just want to let you guys know that. Again, I'm not a detective. I'm not Bandai. I haven't rooted out any of these cheating allegations, so I don't know exactly how they impacted each and every national event, so I can't really speak to it. But again, guys, the stuff that I've seen that's super blatant, I really do hope Bandai steps up and kind of addresses it, because yeah, it's really messed up. But anyways, we are gonna get into this. Let's start with US Nationals, just because it's the region I'm from, I'm most familiar with. We did talk about this a bit in the meta breakdown that I did, I believe, last week. So we'll start going through Andrew's list. He played Icarus. Icarus is going to be one of the more popular decks that won a lot of the events here. So just going through the list, he played, it looks like 56 cards in the main deck, obviously 15 in the sideboard. So going through here, we have your Poutine, we have Secret ID as the main overwhelm of choice, which I think a lot of decks have really just been transitioning into, getting off of the fighting against fate strategy, because there's so many good cards to hit with Secret ID, mainly the token blockers, which Andrew's playing a 3 of here. You also have the blue yellow Goku Black, which you can hit all their tokens in one shot with Secret ID, so that's great. For Krillins, of course, Unison makes a lot of sense. A lot of this yellow stuff here makes sense. A lot of the new stuff too, though, we have the Steadfast Goku and the Turles All Too Easy, both at full 4-ofs. Just absolutely incredible yellow cards, man. I really didn't think that mono yellow Icarus was gonna represent this level of power, especially to win nationals. I talked about it in a video, again, I think it was last week, where we talked about blue yellow Icarus compared to mono yellow Icarus, and it is really true, man. The quality of the blue yellow cards you have to play to now splash Bean is just not worth it. So going the mono yellow route definitely makes a ton of sense. And if you're looking through his list with me, every yellow card is just straight up gas for the most part. What I really like about this list as well is the inclusion of the Slug Engine, because the Slug Engine is just so generically good. But we've seen a lot of blue yellow Icarus lists in the past. Granted, they had Violent Rush Bojack at the time. They were playing 2 to 3 copies of Slug and just hard casting it for 3, and then hopefully relying on Violent Rush Bojack to untap 2 after the fact. But now that you're playing mono yellow, you can super easily just fit this entire 6 card engine in here and just play 1-drop, draw a card, use this effect to play a Slug, or use 3-drop Slug to fetch a 1-drop from the deck, any type of combination like that. And again, it just makes perfect sense because now we're playing mono yellow. So moving along, we have 2 Coolers, 4 Robotic Riposte, and 4 Whis Godly Destruction. So this is obviously a super huge main deck tech for Soul Striker. I do wonder if this is super relevant going into Worlds, because Soul Striker definitely topped. I know it topped 2 spots at the US Nats. I'm not sure exactly how it landed in other regions nationals, but Soul Striker doesn't go on to win any of these Nats, which I am definitely a little bit surprised about, but also that just makes me think, like, do we need to, you know, really main deck tech hate for Soul Striker? It's definitely something worth considering. I would say I would probably, you know, definitely sideboard at the minimum, but do you have to go and main deck a full 4? It's really interesting to kind of decide that. But what's really nice now is, like, playing a mono yellow Icarus deck, you're able to actually make a turn 1 play. So with only 3 slugs, I mean, we just turn 1 draw a card that happens to also have another really good secondary effect. So that's not bad in the slightest. Let's go over the sideboard. So we have at least, well, we have 6 cards plus another 4. So we have 10 cards that are most likely for Cell Surge amongst maybe other matchups. And that's actually so interesting to see that so much of the sideboard is dedicated to Cell Surge. It's a really, really annoying deck to play against, don't get me wrong. But yeah, this is such an interesting thing. And one thing I don't think people quite realize is that, let's just say your Cell Surge opponent has Dark Power, Black Mass, Sand on the board, right? And you know, they make you pitch 2 with like a Rebrand or a Rosie, whatever, and you have 2 cards left. Let's say you pitch a Deborah, and then you pitch like one of these Gohans, or maybe even 2 Deborahs, whatever, and you have enough energy to pay for them. So what can happen is you can pitch your last 2 cards. Again, let's say it's just 2 Deborahs. You play them both for the 1. It's your opponent's turn. It's Cell Surge's turn, so their BMS is going to proc first, and you have no cards in hand to discard, so their auto just basically does nothing. And then your autos on the Deborahs can proc to draw you 4 cards. So even though BMS can be really, really annoying, especially for a yellow deck that doesn't really have like straight up spot removal for it, still a pretty solid tech, or sideboard rather, to have those cards and just, you know, use them to refill your hand if and when your Cell Surge opponent's going to take you down to 0. But anyways, moving along, we have 2 Koitsukais, definitely just for your other mid-range matchups. Anything else playing Robotic Riposte, anything green playing like Boo, Unadulterated Malice, stuff like that. And then we have 3 Vegeta Unison of Fury, great tech for Gogeta Xeno, but this can also just come in to help you kill opponents. Like if you're not playing against a blue or a blue-yellow deck, and your opponent's only got that 1 energy available, and you notice that in game 1, you can definitely bring in Unison of Fury and just kill somebody with it. I can definitely see that happening. But anyways, that's going to wrap up Duval's deck list here. We can definitely talk about, you know, whether Icarus is the play or not for Worlds, but we'll talk about that more at the end. So going into the French Championship, we have the full player ranking here, and we have the first place list. So Cell Surge goes on to win this event. Now, if I'm not mistaken, and anyone correct me if I'm wrong down in the comments, the European Nationals were best of 1 webcam, but you had to sign up with a sideboard because if you made it to top cut, you would then play, you know, webcam best of 3. I believe that's how it was. It could have been different for France again, so definitely correct me if I'm wrong there. But anyways, again, Cell Surge goes on to win this one. So looking at the list, the 4 Demigod main deck is definitely very interesting. This might have been a main board kind of concession for Gogeta Xeno because Gogeta Xeno can give Cell Surge a tough time. So having the earlier Unison means that your Frieza Charismatic Villains are online earlier, whereas a lot of like US Cell Surge lists, for example, don't main deck Demigod. Like Jordan Markle's 3rd place list, for example, doesn't main board it. So again, I could definitely see that being a main deck concession for aggro decks, basically, even like Red Jiren, for example. And again, one thing to remember is what I mentioned before, where Swiss is basically best of 1. So the way you have to construct your deck is very, very weird. Like this is definitely not, you know, in my opinion, at least how it would probably be constructed for best of 3. But because you can only rely on your main board for the Swiss rounds, you definitely want to make sure that your bad matchups are covered. So going through the rest of this, we have the Frieza Ball shenanigans, of course. Actually, it doesn't look like we have the Frieza engine itself, just the ball here to be searched off Deborah, which obviously you want to play with your Dark Broly Unison, but that's probably where this player made concessions to fit in Demigod, if I had to guess. But moving along, we have a Champa, we have your 4 Rosies, your 4 Rebrands, of course, and your 2 Rosies. Bardock the Eliminator, and we also have the Spirit Bomb Goku, which can basically take off as many markers from either of your Unisons as you want to just be a really big finishing attack. And then going into the sideboard, we have Blue Impulse, which again is great against any of the mid-range decks that are playing battle cards during your turn. And then we have 3 copies of Toa Twisted Sisters. So this is actually a really, really cool card that Jordan Markle also played in his Cell Surge list. What's really cool about it is like you can use it in the mirror match to take away the rebrands, take away their you know, Cell 9 drops, anything like that. You can also use it against any deck that's like siding in Saiyan Instincts. Like we saw Jordan do it against Icarus, and I believe it was top 4 or top 3, where he played it against Icarus and was putting their Higher Dragons back into their deck, putting their Saiyan Instincts back into their deck. That's a really, really cool sideboard for Cell Surge. 2 Machika Bora is generally good, 3 Deborahs for the mirror match, assumedly, maybe even the Rogue Android 16. And then we have 2 Boo Negate and 3 BMS, of course, to counter your Deborahs. Oh, one thing I do also want to mention briefly, as it wasn't really, I guess, listed here on the website, or maybe it was if I scroll down some more. But anyways, regardless, I did also want to make brief mention of Android 16, which did get 2nd place at US Nationals. I already talked about that in depth in, again, the US Nationals recap video. But yeah, that is something to consider as well, because that player is also going to Worlds, because from the US, it was 1st and 2nd that made it to Worlds, as were the other regions. I believe it was only 1st place. So definitely worth noting there. But anyways, let's talk about Oceania. So for the 1st place list, we have Gogeta Xeno. So this one I would say is not too unexpected, but let's take a look at the list. So 1 Champa, I think a lot of players play 2, but 1 is definitely fine, obviously. 51 cards in the main, so very consistent build here. 1 Seeker ID main board. I'm not sure if Oceania also had the restriction of main deck best of 1 for Swiss and then best of 3 for Top Cut. So someone fill me on that if you know about that. But anyways, 4 super combos, obviously. And the main board, Bardock, the Floodgate one, which name escapes my mind. The text is way too small to read. But yeah, basically the black equivalent of Nimbus that you have to overwhelm out. And this build leans heavy into the Pycon being able to boost the 1-drops. Obviously, we have our full suite of 8 True Fighting Spirits. We also have 3 copies of the Goku 1-drop, which is a really good card because whenever he swings, he basically like negates a super combo, because if your opponent super combos and draws, he just gains 10k power. So it just matches that super combo power automatically, which is kind of crazy. But then for our Gogetas, we have almost a full set of Gogetas, just 3 Marvelous Might, 2 copies of the Kainagate Pan SCR, definitely the best SCR for this deck in my opinion, because not only is it great defensively, but you put out such a big board that you can always just play it for free, and you can probably always just kill your opponent with it, to be honest. 2 Super coming out, 2 Petrification. I really like this split a lot. I think Petrification is a really great Gogeta Xeno mainboard card. 2 Beyond All Limits, and then 4 Kai TPs, of course. Going over to the sideboard, we have the 2nd Seeker ID just to fix ratios. We have another copy of the Kainagate, 2 Deborahs, obviously for Cell Surge, most likely. And then we have the Kibito Kai. So I believe this card is one of those where you can combo it to then pop a 30k. I think that's what it is, at least, or maybe it's Return to the bottom of the deck. I don't remember exactly, but this is, I'm assuming, a Sin Shenron sideboard tech, if I'm remembering what it does correctly. And then we have the 8-drop Gogeta, just for your random, like, Hatchjack matchups, any weird control stuff like that. 3 Koitsukai, anything for Robotic or Post, Topo Righteous Aid, all that good stuff. Max Power Kamehameha, and then 2 copies of the Bardock that wipes away, I believe, 30k or higher. Or maybe it's 6-drop or higher, but either way, again, that could be a mirror match tech, or that could be a Sin Shenron tech for sure. But anyways, moving on to the next region, we have Latin America. So we have 1st place Hatchjack. Okay, this is actually jogging my memory because I do remember hearing about Hatchjack winning one of the Nats, and that's pretty crazy because this is a deck that a lot of people don't like to face. So looking through the main, gist of the deck here, it's a Gogeta build, which I've seen a lot of because one of my teammates is hugely in love with Gogeta Hatchjack. So definitely seems to rely on the 8-drop. But what's really weird about a build like this is that you can't really reliably get to Gogeta 8 against blue or yellow because the card will never successfully enter play. Like against blue, they'll hit it with God Sealing. Against yellow, they'll rest mode it and then probably KO it the next turn. So, or remove it somehow the next turn. But yeah, you can't really reliably play your win con against blue or yellow. So what I've seen, at least from my teammate that plays Hatch, is he usually just tries to mill out the blue and yellow decks, which is kind of wild. I'm sure there's some other alternate win cons you could play, like maybe the Dark Devilish King. That could be a good one, but anyways, moving to the sideboard, we have the True Fighting Spirit Vegeta, which is interesting because I'm pretty sure he only gets his main effect if you're playing a Black Sand Leader, so maybe that's just for fusion fodder. I'm not too sure. 1 Deborah on the side with 2 in the main, and yeah, Hatch is definitely one of those decks that can main Deborah really well because there will be times where you'll just cast it for 3 and just draw 2 cards. Like, that's just not bad in the main at all. We have 1 copy of this Sin Xeno Dragon in the side and 1 in the main. So this is, as far as I'm aware, just a barrier dual attack blocker. No, sorry, a barrier double strike blocker with deflect as well. And I believe if you spirit boost it, you can restand it and make your opponent mill a card. And that effect, I believe, is generic to any just, whatever unison you spirit boost. So that's not bad, especially for the fact that it's defensive. And, if you're going for that mill win con, I mean, it helps you mill them out a little bit faster, right? Foo Shrouded, 1 in the main, 1 on the side. Again, maybe for mirror matches for yellow decks, because if they're not playing like Frostily Poison, for example, they probably can't stop the Foo Shrouded. 2 Super Kamehamehas, This is an interesting one because I feel like normally you're not really trying to go low life and hatch, but maybe it's for aggro matchups, something of that nature. 2 of the Deborah counterplay can be really good against a lot of certain boss monsters, especially boss monsters that have to attack or use activate mains to do what they need to do. And then the 4th petrification on the side, a 2nd max power, and 2 of the Broly unison, which I forget exactly what it does because I remember just being very, very unimpressed with it, but I think it just offers you spot removal if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that could be what that's for there. And then for Asian finals, I don't know why it's only a 2nd place list. Maybe they just had a hard time, you know, getting the 1st place deck list for whatever reason. But I did actually do CS's deck profile on my channel, so I won't go too much over this one. If you want to know more about what that deck's all about, you can go watch that deck profile video. But yeah, this is the 2nd place list. I believe 1st place for Asian Nationals was Icarus, so that leaves, you know, 2 wins for Icarus. But anyways, wrapping it up for Italy, we have another win for Icarus, so we'll go through this list rather quickly. So 2 Basil, 1 Bergamo, 2 Cooler, so far same as Andrews, 4 Higher Dragon, 4 Mecha, and then we have 2 of the Secret ID. And then I think the first difference comes where you get to Chi-Chi, Melee, Matriarch. So again, another main deck tech for blue, but I think this one's worse than Whis in my opinion because it only really hits Dimension Magic, and if Blue Baby's not really a viable deck in the format, I don't think this card is really quite as necessary, so that's just my 2 cents on that. We do have the Fu Shrouded main board, the Pan SCR, and then we do have the Slug Engine once again, followed by 2 Poutine, 4 copies of Turles, 4 copies of Steadfast, and again a 56 card list. So this is actually very, very similar to Andrew's list, but all the cards like make total sense. I'm not saying there's any like copying going on or anything like that, but the deck is very, very similar. A lot of really good yellow cards. Going to the sideboard, a lot of it's very similar as well. 3 Deborah, 3 Instincts, 2 Koitsukai. Forbidden Power is a really good tech that I like because while you don't stop the attack you're using it on like Nimbus does, you can still do like battle tricks with it. Like you can Forbidden Power and then Power of a Super Saiyan, or you could Forbidden Power and then Final Flash. Like you can do cool things like that. The 4th Final Flash, another unexpected turn, and then 3 copies of Vegeta Unison Fury, so that makes a lot of sense. So now having gone over most of those 1st place lists, let's talk a little bit briefly about, you know, what the play for Worlds might be. And I might even do a separate video going more in depth on this because I feel like it's just splitting two topics pretty crazily. But anyways, Higher Dragon obviously had really strong representation at these different nationals. A lot of you guys, and myself included, would even consider thinking like it's probably not the play for Nats because, you know, people are going to be aware of that, especially these really good players that are going to Worlds. So if a lot of these players are on the mindset of let's counter Icarus, you'd probably be on the mindset of let's not take Icarus to this event because we don't want to just auto lose, whatever, right? But I really don't think there is a super true hard counter to Icarus. Like, all the cards in the deck are just generically good. The deck doesn't really follow too streamlined of a strategy to get countered by any one thing. Like, think about it. Is there anything you can think of that truly just like shuts down Icarus? It's just that good of a mid-range deck where it can probably play out of most scenarios if the pilot's good enough and you have the right cards, which all these players that play this deck are probably, you know, are definitely, I should say, that level to where they could definitely, you know, get around these things, right? So Icarus honestly might just be the play. Cell Surge I think is also a very interesting one to consider because obviously Cell Surge is really hard to beat in general, especially in game 1, so you have that game 1 advantage. But for 2, you're siding Black Mass Saiyan to counter, you know, your opponent's Deborahs and their free play battle cards, but you also do propose like a barrier for Icarus because their Awakened Leader wants to play a 1-drop from the drop area, and that can proc BMS. So that also seems like a really good play. But we even saw, again, 2nd place of US Nationals, a very rogue Android 16, you know, almost went all the way. So there could be some rogue deck out there like that maybe even has a good Icarus matchup, and that's one that I would consider for sure. If you're aware of any deck that does that, that seems like a good pick to me. But anyways, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. I thought it was pretty cool going through a lot of different regions and their nationals. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.